As you know, we talked with several of the candidates in contested races here in Calhoun County, and we'll continue to do that this week. In fact, right now with Tina Yost, who is a candidate for the Circuit Court Judge, and Tina's in the studio with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Richard.
Thank you for your time today. Talk a little bit, if you would, to start us off about your experience and your background here as you approach this precipice of something new, perhaps.
Well, thank you, Richard. I have practiced as a litigator attorney for almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried cases from complex civil and criminal cases in the state courts and the federal courts. I have the depth and breadth of the experience to cover any case that would become before a circuit court judge. But most importantly, I have specialized. And just like you have your doctors that may specialize in heart surgery, I've specialized in family law. And why is that important? Because this position is assigned to the family division. It is currently 100% family law. And by necessity, even if there are some changes, it is going to remain a majority of family law. There is no way that our court system could meet the statutory requirements and not have that happen. So I have 15 years of dedicated family law experience handling every type of family law case that would come before this judge, and I have judicial experience. I served as a hearing officer referee for almost 12 years, and during that time, I presided over cases, I swore in witnesses, I made rulings on evidentiary and court rule issues, I applied the law to the facts, made recommendations to the judges. They sign off, of course, on the final orders because that's the difference between a referee and a judge.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been in the courtroom with real people handling their cases, making a difference in their lives. And that's what I want to continue to do.
Give us an example of some of the family court cases that you would encounter in the circuit court. When you say family law, what does that mean?
So family law covers divorce,
Mm-hmm.
custody, parenting time, child support, abuse and neglect, juvenile delinquency. Other than an adoption where people are hoping to bring a new family member in, most people that come into family court it's not a happy day for them. They're at a really low point in their life. So it's frankly about people having someone else tell them what time they can spend with their children, when they can see their children, what property they can take that's been theirs, telling them how much money they pay to take care of their children. It's a really emotional, tough time. And with the juvenile delinquency and abuse and neglect, you have to be able to relate to these families.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have high-risk families, and they need to believe that you have their best interests in mind, because if they don't buy into the program and real change doesn't happen.
Yeah, so what is your preferred way then, given that this is the dynamic most of the time? What is your preferred way to approach that? How do you see the judge's role?
Well, I don't think that a judge is someone who just sits up on a bench and tells people what to do with their children.
Yeah.
I think that judges in the family division especially, and this was the vision of the courts and the legislature when the family division was created, it is the judge's job to be familiar with all of the services. In fact, the statute says that you need someone with enough expertise to properly coordinate the services for families and children. So I think of it like a puzzle. You know, you get this family that comes in there, and the reason they come in may not be the real problem. So, for example, you might have a case that comes in as what we call a dirty house case. You know, the house is unfit for the children to live. What's the real problem? Is it substance abuse? Is it mental health? Is it that one parent left the other parent, and the parent left behind is working two jobs and is just so overwhelmed that they can't handle it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's about finding the puzzle pieces, making them fit, and giving these families the support and service they need to be successful. If you just sit up there and say, oh, you did something wrong, you don't deserve to have your kids, you will not affect real change, and will end up overwhelming the system with families having their children taken away, when if we'd have simply put the right supports in place, we could have helped them. And that makes them productive in our society. The idea is that you have to balance firmness and compassion. You have to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, but at the same point, you have to understand their needs and put those puzzle pieces in place. And frankly, there's no law book to teach you that. You only learn it through years of experience, and that's why I think my over 15 years experience directly working with these families is so important.
So in the process of these types of cases in court where you're following procedures and so on, you're talking about trying to identify root causes. If you're on the bench and you're faced with a case like this and you're wondering what the root causes are, is it within the purview of a judge to ask those questions? Or, where are the boundaries there? You're not an attorney presenting one side or another. How does that work?
Well, what we have to remember is in family court, it's not pro-mom, it's not pro-dad, it's pro-child. We're looking for the result that's in the best interest of the child. And the court absolutely has the ability to ask the questions that need to be asked to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of the child.
So you as the judge could do that?
Absolutely. And we also, I'm not saying the judge is the only person that does that. Clearly, you have child support professionals, you have guardian ad litems, you have attorneys, you have friend of the court staff, you have probation staff, you have service workers from the community, case supervisors. There's a ton of people that go into the program, but absolutely, it's the judge's job to ensure that all of the necessary information is considered to make the decision that's in the best interest of the child.
Tina Yost is here. You'll see her name on the ballot as she is seeking the circuit court judgeship, and we'll come back in just a moment on WBCK. Tina Yost here, candidate for circuit court judge in Calhoun County. I've asked all the judge candidates with whom we've spoken the following. We're in such a party politics society now that one of the litmus test, if not the only litmus test that folks tend to look for is a party affiliation. And, of course, with the judge candidates, there is no party affiliation. So how do you recommend that folks gather information about you and judge candidates in general? And does it worry you that this doesn't apply when folks are so reliant on that?
Well, I was at a banquet Friday night for the NAACP, and Pastor Bullock was speaking, and he said something that was really powerful. And he said, we don't vote on people, we should vote on issues. What issues are important to you? Candidates can say anything. They can say, I'm part of this party. I've actually seen races where I went, are you sure that that's what party you're with? We question it. So, it's really about not what you say, but what you do. I've handled not 50, 100, 500. I've handled thousands of cases in our local circuit court. I didn't just start showing up yesterday at events because I wanted to be a judge. I've been working in this community with community service for over 20 years. I'm on the board of Safe Place. I'm on the board of Community Fatherhood. I'm a Junior League member. I'm a Rotarian. I volunteer for various agencies and organizations. I have been on the front lines working in our community for years to make a difference. And I think that's really important because people can look at my background and they don't have to guess what it is I stand for. I stand for a strong family division because I believe that's what's needed here in Calhoun County. And frankly, that seems to be where this race is splitting. There's one side that appears to want what they call this court of one justice. They want to go with everybody can do everything. I'm part of the group, and this goes up throughout the state. I'm actually one of 21 attorneys out of almost 3,000 family law attorneys that has been elected to the Family Law Council of the State Bar of Michigan. And we work on issues that are needed for families and children. And the Family Law Council and the family law attorneys from the State Bar of Michigan are very concerned about this trend to what they call a court of one justice because it would take us backwards. It took us years to develop a good family court that services the needs of families and children. And it's funny because the district court seems to be going towards all these specialty courts, veterans court, mental health court. Everybody recognizes the needs for those courts, but somehow it seems that family court seems to take a back seat. And I'm here to say family court is important. Our families and children deserve the best, and they deserve to have a court dedicated to their needs.
What's the number one challenge in the family court now?
Oh, there's so many challenges in the family court. You know that drug use is extremely high. Drug use is always a problem. There is always the mental health issue and the lack of resources to help with that. That's always an issue. But I just outlined one of the big ones for you, Richard, and that is the lack of people who are not familiar with the family court and people who don't necessarily subscribe to the importance of the family court buying into how necessary it is. And that's a challenge at the family court. You know, the family division was created over 20 years ago. We're still struggling. In Calhoun County, our family division plan, in my opinion, wasn't fully implemented until 2014.
Wow.
The judges were still on a rotating basis because nobody wanted to do it full time. We finally got where we were supposed to be in 2014, and now it feels like we're getting a push back once again. And as I stated, you know, from a state standpoint, the Family Law Council is looking at a situation where we have to make more legislation or to tighten up, I guess is the way we'd put it, the legislation, because it needs to be clear. You know, voters should not be confused about what they're voting for. People shouldn't be able to just move things around. We need to have it clear that there are required services for families and children, and we're going to meet those needs. Families are the basis of our community. It's important we have the right courts to serve them.
Tina Yost is here. She would like to be the circuit court judge in Calhoun County. So, as others have said, when you're trying to discern between judge candidates, you're saying do your homework, which is really applicable to all of the ballot, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, Richard, you know, the only one that likes change, and I know this from personal experience since I have a 2-year-old potty training, the only one that likes change is a baby with a wet diaper.
Yeah.
Okay, when the family division came in, no one wanted to change to that. The fact is they kind of, much like, you know, children, it takes time to go through and learn processes. There are people who understood and recognized the need and said, yes, we have to put this in place. They originally tried to create the family division through the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said no, they took a legislative route. The legislature passed it, but they didn't necessarily put the teeth in that was needed. So, you know, yes, there is a fight for our family division, and I'm standing up for that fight because I believe in it and I believe in the difference. You know, I'm not just endorsed by people who are politicians or political groups or activists. I'm endorsed by people whose lives have been changed because we had a family division that met their needs.
Is there a burnout factor here for a judge, you think?
Oh, there absolutely can be. However, you know, you have to understand some people are cut from the cloth to do it and some people aren't. I truly believe, I had a wise gentleman, his name was Fred Gruber. I worked with him in Detroit, and he said, you don't choose the law chooses you. And I came from a background in which I had people lift me up, and that's why I am where I am today. And so I had this need to give back consistently. And when I first started law, you know, I told you I was doing complex corporate cases. I was doing real estate cases. We were doing mergers and acquisitions. That law was good, but it didn't give me the feeling that I had when I could see a family reunited,
right,
when I could see someone that was in a terrible situation able to come out of it and say, okay, life's going to be okay again. And so I got my reward from seeing the difference that I could make with families and children. And because of that, I had a draw towards family law. It's what I love to do. I love working with families and children, making a difference. You know, juvenile delinquents are a perfect example. Some kids are just, as you know, hard-headed. And I am one of those people that I like that challenge. I like to get through to that youth and watch them transform. I still have kids that came through the process and will write me letters and say, hey, here's a picture of my family. I just want you to know I turned myself around. And those are great stories because you know that if they hadn't have had the right services, if they hadn't have had the right people at the right time, it could have been a different outcome.
Tina Yost, candidate for circuit court judge, talking about what's motivating her in this race. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you for the time today.